Good evening and welcome to Royal Report Daily, your most trusted source for breaking royal news and exclusive investigations. Tonight, we are covering a story that has taken the internet completely by storm. Because this time, the attack on Meghan Markle did not come from someone inside the palace. It did not come from a royal writer or a British newspaper. It came from one of the most unexpected places you could imagine, the Saturday Night Live stage. And the man holding the microphone was Colin Jost. For those who do not follow American comedy closely, Colin Jost is not just any comedian. He is one of the most powerful voices in American late-night television. He has been a head writer and anchor at Saturday Night Live for many years. He is married to Scarlett Johansson, one of the biggest movie stars in the world. He moves in the exact same top-level Hollywood circles that Meghan Markle has spent years carefully working her way into. And when a man like Colin Jost decides to make you the subject of his jokes, not once, not twice, but again and again with sharper and sharper words, the entire entertainment industry pays very close attention. What started as a few passing jokes has in 2026 become something that people on both sides of the Atlantic are calling a cultural turning point. Because Colin Jost's comments about Meghan Markle have crossed the line from light celebrity teasing into something that feels far more pointed, far more documented, and far more damaging to her carefully built public image. And tonight on Royal Report Daily, we are breaking down exactly what he said, why it hit the way it did, and what it means for Meghan's future in Hollywood and beyond. Don't forget to subscribe to Royal Report Daily and hit that notification bell so you never miss a single update. Let's start at the very beginning of this story because context is everything here. For years, Meghan Markle has placed herself very deliberately inside the American entertainment industry. After leaving the royal family in 2020, she and Harry moved to Montecito, California, right in the middle of the world's most powerful celebrity world. They signed a reported $100 million deal with Netflix. They launched podcasts. They attended high-profile charity events. They built relationships with top names across Hollywood. The message Meghan was sending to the entertainment world was clear and consistent. I belong here. I am one of you. I have always been one of you. And for a while, that message worked. The Oprah interview made global headlines. The Netflix documentary pulled in enormous viewing numbers. The memoir Spare became an international bestseller. She was on magazine covers. She was being invited to exclusive events. The Hollywood welcome of Meghan Markle felt for a brief and shining moment genuine and warm. But then something began to change, quietly at first, then more and more noticeably. And one of the clearest early signs of that change came from inside 30 Rockefeller Plaza, the home of Saturday Night Live, in the form of Colin Jost's increasingly sharp observations about the Duchess of Sussex. The first time Jost made a joke specifically targeting Meghan, many people in the audience laughed and moved on. It felt like standard celebrity roast material. Meghan was famous. She was controversial. She was a natural target for a late-night comedy writer looking for a punchline that the whole audience would immediately recognize. Nothing unusual about that. Celebrities get joked about on SNL every single week. But then he came back to the subject and then again. And each time he returned to Meghan Markle as a comedic subject, the jokes became a little less gentle and a little more pointed. A little less focused on surface-level celebrity gossip and a little more focused on the specific contradictions and inconsistencies that serious journalists and royal investigators had been quietly documenting for years. Stay tuned to Royal Report Daily. We bring you the stories that matter. In one of his most widely shared weekend update segments from early 2026, Jost addressed the ongoing controversy surrounding Meghan's lifestyle brand, American Riviera Orchard. For those who need a quick recap, this was Meghan's much-anticipated entry into the world of luxury lifestyle products. The brand was announced with enormous fanfare. Carefully staged promotional content was released. Celebrity friends were photographed receiving elegant gift boxes filled with what appeared to be artisanal jam and other luxury food items. The internet went into a frenzy. Meghan was positioning herself as a kind of modern royal-adjacent Martha Stewart, a sophisticated lifestyle authority whose seal of approval would carry enormous commercial weight. But then something very embarrassing happened. The products were delayed. The website launched without actual products available for purchase. Media reviews were lukewarm at best, and the overall reception from the American consumer market was noticeably cooler than Meghan and her team had clearly expected. Jost picked up on every single one of these details and turned them into one of the most memorable comedy segments of the year. His observation, delivered with the perfectly dry and calm style that has made him one of SNL's most effective weekend update anchors, went something like this. Here was a woman who left one of the most powerful royal families in human history, moved to one of the wealthiest zip codes in America, signed deals worth more money than most people will see in multiple lifetimes, and her grand contribution to the cultural conversation was a jar of jam that nobody could actually buy. He didn't shout it. He didn't dramatize it. He simply stated it with the calm, almost confused expression of a man reading a headline he genuinely cannot make sense of. And the studio audience absolutely fell apart laughing. Because when you strip away all the PR strategy, all the carefully worded statements, all the glamorous photo shoots, that is essentially the story. And comedy at its most effective simply states what everyone is already thinking, but has been too polite or too cautious to say out loud. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to Royal Report Daily for more exclusive investigations. But Jost didn't stop at the lifestyle brand. In later appearances through early and mid-2026, he began touching on themes that went considerably deeper. And this is where his commentary started to feel less like standard celebrity mockery and more like something approaching genuine cultural criticism. He made observations about the fundamental contradiction at the heart of the Sussex public identity. Here, he noted, was a couple who had built their entire brand on the concept of radical honesty and transparency. A couple who had given interview after interview talking about the importance of living your truth, speaking your truth, and refusing to participate in systems built on deception and image management. And yet, Jost pointed out, the number of things about their lives that remained carefully hidden, strategically undisclosed, or actively disputed by credible sources seemed to grow larger with every passing month rather than smaller. He made a joke, again delivered with that signature calm deadpan, about how the most aggressively transparent couple in the history of celebrity culture somehow managed to make the British royal family, an institution that has operated behind walls of secrecy for literally 1,000 years, look like an open book by comparison. The joke landed hard because, again, it wasn't inventing something that wasn't there. It was simply stating in comic form what a significant portion of the public had already been quietly thinking. Here at Royal Report Daily, we have been tracking this cultural shift for months. And what Colin Jost's commentary represents is something genuinely significant. It represents the moment when mainstream American entertainment culture stopped giving Meghan Markle the benefit of the doubt. For years, there was an unspoken rule in Hollywood. You did not go after Meghan too hard, partly because she was black, and criticism of her was frequently, sometimes fairly, sometimes unfairly, characterized as racially motivated, partly because she had a genuinely sympathetic personal story that many people connected with emotionally, and partly because she had powerful friends and a very aggressive legal team that had clearly shown a willingness to pursue anyone who crossed certain lines. But Colin Jost, because of who he is and where he stands in the entertainment world, is somewhat uniquely positioned to break that unspoken rule without facing the same consequences that others might. He is married to Scarlett Johansson, meaning he has no need of Meghan's approval or social connections to advance his career. He works for Lorne Michaels at Saturday Night Live, an institution so deeply embedded in American cultural life that it essentially operates outside the normal rules of Hollywood social politics. And his comedy style, dry, intellectual, never cruel for cruelty's sake, makes it very difficult to characterize his jokes as motivated by malice or prejudice. He comes across not as someone who dislikes Meghan Markle personally, but as someone who simply finds the gap between her public image and documented reality to be genuinely, almost irresistibly funny. And that distinction matters enormously because it means the criticism lands differently. It doesn't feel like an attack. It feels like an observation. And observations are much harder to dismiss or deflect than attacks. Don't miss a single update. Subscribe to Royal Report Daily right now. In one particularly sharp segment from the spring of 2026, Jost addressed the ongoing questions surrounding the Sussex children, Archie and Lilibet. He was careful, as he always is, to frame his commentary in the language of genuine bewilderment rather than accusation. He noted that in an era when virtually every celebrity parent, From Kylie Jenner to Chrissy Teigen to even the most fiercely private Hollywood stars, documents their children's lives in extraordinary detail across social media. The Sussexes had managed to make their children essentially invisible to the public, not just private, invisible. He pointed out, to considerable audience laughter, that for a couple who had written memoirs, produced Netflix documentaries, given sit-down interviews with Oprah Winfrey, and launched multiple podcasts, all built around the concept of their personal emotional lives and family experiences, the actual children at the center of those family experiences remained almost entirely unseen. He compared it to a chef who talks about food constantly, publishes cookbooks, hosts a cooking show, and opens a restaurant, but somehow never actually serves any meals. The joke sounds absurd when stated that bluntly, but that is precisely why it works as comedy and precisely why it stings as criticism, because the underlying observation is genuinely difficult to argue against. And the timing of Jost's jokes in 2026 was particularly cutting because they landed right alongside the palace's formal review of Archie and Lilibet's documentation, the ongoing questions about birth records and baptism registrations, and the growing number of credible voices asking questions that Meghan's PR team had consistently refused to address directly. Jost didn't reference those specific legal and constitutional questions in his comedy. He didn't need to. The jokes worked independently, but for anyone already aware of the deeper investigation happening behind the scenes, the jokes carried an extra layer of weight that the studio audience might not have fully registered. Royal Report Daily, bringing you the truth behind every headline. What has been perhaps most striking about the reaction to Jost's comedy is what has happened in the days and weeks following each segment. In previous years, whenever a major public figure made critical comments about Meghan Markle, even comments far less pointed than Jost's, the response from her supporters was immediate, organized, and very loud. Social media would light up with accusations of racism and misogyny. Articles would appear defending her. Celebrities would rush to issue statements of support. The overall effect was to make the original criticism feel like it had backfired, leaving the critic looking worse than the subject of the criticism. But that pattern has not repeated itself with Jost's 2026 commentary, and the relative quiet from Meghan's usual defenders is being noticed and discussed in entertainment industry circles. When the jokes aired, the response on social media was, compared to what it would have been 2 or 3 years ago, surprisingly quiet. There were some defenders. There was some pushback. But there was not the overwhelming wave of protective outrage that Meghan's critics have historically faced. Sources within the entertainment industry suggest that this quieter response reflects something important, a genuine shift in how Meghan is perceived, even among people who were previously sympathetic to her. The cumulative weight of unaddressed questions, failed business ventures, and what many see as a pattern of image management that contradicts her stated values of honesty and transparency has worn away goodwill that once seemed essentially unlimited. And when Colin Jost, as a well-liked, respected, culturally mainstream figure who is nobody's idea of a right-wing agitator or a royal family loyalist, starts making jokes that resonate deeply with a broad studio audience, it suggests that the cultural conversation around Meghan Markle has moved into genuinely new territory. Subscribe to Royal Report Daily and stay ahead of every royal development. There is one more dimension to this story that we need to address directly, and it concerns the specific nature of Jost's comedic approach and why it is proving so effective in 2026. The key is that Jost never attacks Meghan on the basis of who she is. He never makes jokes about her race, her background, her family of origin, or her personal struggles. He is far too smart and far too careful a writer to go anywhere near territory that could legitimately be characterized as discriminatory or mean-spirited. Instead, every single one of his jokes targets the gap between what Meghan says and what is documented, between the image she projects and the reality that credible sources describe, between the values she publicly champions and the behavior that witnesses and investigators have brought to light. This is the classical form of satire at its most effective, holding power accountable not through personal attack, but through the simple and devastating act of pointing at a contradiction and asking the audience to consider what it means. And in 2026, with the palace's formal review of Sussex documentation underway. With Tom Bower's latest investigation making waves in serious media circles, with questions about Archie and Lilibet's royal status moving from online speculation into the language of constitutional law, Colin Jost's comedy is landing in an environment where the contradictions it targets have never felt more visible or more significant. Meghan's response to all of this has been characteristically silence. No statement from her team, no social media response, no carefully timed interview designed to reshape the narrative. Just silence. And as we have discussed many times here on Royal Report Daily, in the world of high-stakes public image management, the choice of when to stay silent is just as revealing as the choice of when to speak. Her silence in the face of Jost's comedy could mean several things. It could mean her team has decided that any response would only amplify the jokes and draw more attention to them. It could mean she genuinely does not know how to respond to criticism that is framed as humor rather than accusation. Or it could mean that the team around her is increasingly occupied with the more serious and more legally significant challenges building on multiple other fronts at the same time. Whatever the reason, the silence allows the jokes to sit in the cultural atmosphere without challenge, continuing to shape public perception in ways that no amount of carefully crafted PR content can easily undo. Hit that like button and subscribe to Royal Report Daily right now. Let's talk about what all of this means for Meghan's future in Hollywood. Because the Colin Jost story is ultimately a story about cultural positioning, and cultural positioning is everything in the entertainment business. When Meghan and Harry first arrived in California, the Hollywood community largely welcomed them with open arms. There was genuine excitement about the possibility of a real British royal, or at least a former one, choosing to build a life within the American entertainment world. Studios and streaming platforms saw commercial opportunity. Brands saw extraordinary marketing potential. And many individual celebrities saw in Meghan a kindred spirit. Someone who had, as they saw it, bravely stood up to an oppressive institution and chosen authenticity over obligation. But the entertainment industry is fundamentally practical. It runs on outcomes, not intentions. And the outcomes of the Sussex Hollywood experiment have been, by most measurable standards, disappointing relative to the enormous initial investment of goodwill and financial resources. The Netflix deal has not produced the kind of content that drives the subscriber numbers and cultural conversation that the platform needs. The podcast venture ended without renewal. The lifestyle brand stumbled badly right from the start. And the relentless focus on past grievances against the royal family, grievances that a global audience outside of dedicated Sussex supporters has largely stopped finding interesting, has made it increasingly difficult to position Meghan as a forward-looking creative force rather than a backward-looking grievance machine. Into this environment, Colin Jost's jokes land not as isolated comedic observations, but as part of a broader cultural reassessment. When someone with his standing, someone who is embedded in the entertainment industry, who has nothing to gain from criticizing Meghan and nothing to fear from her or her team, starts making jokes that the audience receives with genuine, enthusiastic laughter, it sends a signal to everyone else in the industry. The signal is simple. The protective social contract around Meghan Markle is weakening, and the cultural conversation is moving on. This is Royal Report Daily, and we will be right here as every chapter of this story continues to unfold. So where does all of this leave us in the summer of 2026? Colin Jost continues to anchor Weekend Update at Saturday Night Live. His jokes about Meghan have not stopped. If anything, sources within the comedy world suggest his writers are tracking the ongoing documentation controversies, the palace review process, and the broader 2026 Sussex story with considerable interest. Because the material keeps generating itself. The gap between the public image and the documented reality keeps providing new and increasingly striking examples of the contradiction that sits at the heart of his comedic approach. Meghan, meanwhile, is said by sources close to her team to be acutely aware of the Jost problem in a way that she is not always aware of criticism from more predictable quarters. When a British tabloid runs a critical story, her team knows exactly how to characterize it as part of a long-running institutional campaign against her. When a royal biographer publishes unflattering findings,